Joyce!
Hi, Aaron. Oh,
Hey,
it's good to
friend.
see you. Good to see you, old friend.
Yeah, how's it going?
Not too bad. Hanging in.
Welcome, everybody. We're here live. I'm talking with Joyce El-Khoury. I'm Brian Jagde, and we're here representing Opera for Peace. And we're currently ambassadors for Opera for Peace. I'm very proud of that. And just Joyce and I are just going to have a little chat about mentorship. So,
Yes. Hello, everyone. Coming
so
from Toronto, and you're in
what
New
you
York, Brian. Are you in New York?
New York, yeah,
Yes.
New Toronto, yes. Looks
Yes.
nice. Um, so tell me, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your background, like, because we've talked a lot about this in the past whenever we worked together and stuff, but I always love your story and I think it's great for you to share. So if you would, that would be.
Okay, sure. So, my story. I was born in Lebanon, and my family and I immigrated to Canada when I was 6, and so we started over completely. And I was always just I was a singer since the age of 3. I just loved singing. I used to entertain my whole family when they came over. Um, and then out of nowhere came this incredible stage fright
Oh,
where
wow.
I couldn't even sing in front of my parents. I used to hide in the basement. I
Right.
kid you not. But I loved singing so much. And at the age of 15, I asked my mother to set me up with singing lessons, and she did. And I started working with a lady by the name of Karen Spicer in Ottawa, in my hometown where I grew up. She taught me some songs and some arias, and got me prepared to audition for Ottawa U for the music program. At the time, I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to go into nursing. I had done all my science courses and everything in high school. That's what I wanted to do.
It's amazing how we end up in totally different places.
Complete, right? Exactly. But
Yeah,
my parents, yeah, I mean,
I remember
you've
you
probably
telling me
heard
that
this a
you
million
used to sing in
times.
the bathroom and have like this natural operatic kind of sound. So it just seems like you would sort of in the basement, right? In the basement, you would sing,
I
and
would
it
sing in
was
the basement because my parents, and then
you're
I was in
hiding.
school and I was working 4 jobs, and,
Yes.
you know, and so I would practice very quietly in the basement while my parents were sleeping. And it was funny because thankfully, it was my parents that encouraged me to go into music. That was not my plan at all. And so I was lucky in that sense. And then I got into the music program at Ottawa U. And then, the rest is history. I went to AVA and then the Met program. And then I met Maestro Mazel. And then I met you.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you were telling me about how, like, because you had to sing so soft in the basement or something, that you like learned how to do a pianissimo. That's
That
basically.
is how I found my piano, actually. Not
I'm
gonna
still trying
lie.
to find my piano.
Honey, you have so many things going for you. You're doing just fine.
I'm
Uh,
just kidding. Um,
so yeah, but yeah, it was an interesting journey that got me here, and I had a lot of support and a lot of mentors and people who believed in me,
yeah.
and when I didn't believe in myself, and when quite a few also didn't believe in me.
Right.
And I think that's something I talk to my students about a lot
Yeah. Of
now,
course.
is negotiating whose opinion matters and whose doesn't. And
That's
but
a big
anyway,
deal.
you started out as a baritone.
I did, and actually, it's not true. I really started off as a tenor. I mean, I was a tenor my whole life, really. I mean,
Okay.
I never knew it. I
Okay.
just sang in choruses as a child and loved to sing all the time. And I too also like was in school for something completely different before I went to school to sing. I was in school for computer science and business because
Okay.
I heard singing was a terrible idea for a career. you
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
basically, people were like, just it's a great hobby, but you're not going to make any money. And I was like, all right, well, okay. So I went to school for something completely different. And, along the way, I had the same kind of thing when you were talking about, it's so funny. We're talking about mentorship here today. And then I didn't even think about the fact that when I was growing up, I had a lot of people who were supportive of me who weren't, even in my own home that were like I remember my music teacher was always so kind and like a father figure too to me. His name was Dr. Hughes actually, and he was really cool. And he kind of actually taught me something about support when I didn't even know I was learning it. So who knows? He used to talk about it as like this paunch stomach thing when you breathe. I mean, it was a little more simple than what we do up on stage. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so when I was 20, I still was singing, and I love singing, and I kind of hated computer science. So I was like, I'm gonna switch. And I heard about another school, so I auditioned and got in, and then they switched me to baritone about one semester in. But I think part of the reason for that is a lot of people don't know necessarily what to do with voices that have a certain color. Especially when you're teaching a technique that I had never taken a voice lesson until I was 20. So I didn't even know what technique meant. I didn't even know how to sing opera. I didn't know what the word resonance meant in regards to opera. I knew like what the word resonance meant, but you know, it's just a totally different thing. So
incredible.
Anyhow, they were teaching me some of the early basics of like operatic sound, and I was mimicking a lot. So in that way, I was kind of creating even a darker sound, like this very, you know, depressed kind of larynx, tongue back, kind of horrible technique. But you know, I didn't know any better, and they were trying their best to teach me what they could from the start. It's got to be tough when you're somebody who has zero training and they're 20 years old and they come to college.
Well, I think it could be double-edged, right? You're starting with a clean slate.
Yeah, there's that too. There's something.
And so you can build on that, but there is a challenge with interesting voices.
Yes, right? I mean, you have such an amazing color in your voice naturally too.
People don't know what it is. and that's okay. And for a long time that was troublesome because people either didn't know how to cast me, or they didn't know if I was singing well, or you know. But I started out even in undergrad when I would sing Mimi's aria, and then I would sing the habanera from Carmen, because I had an unusual dark color back then, you know. And
you should still do it today. You should still do it today.
I will. Stay tuned for that. Yeah. But I mean, I think part of a teacher's job is to just teach technique and get out of the way. Yeah. You know, let the voice tell us what it is. Once we found clarity of sound and freedom, right? But
yeah, I felt like I had this natural like a way of expressing things that was, you know, me, and mostly I just was focusing on trying to create a sound though, because you know, at first it's just so much harder to understand how to use the voice and express it at the same time when you're trying so hard just to learn how to use the voice the right way, whatever that is. I find that there are a lot of teachers out there who teach all different kinds of techniques, and some things do work for certain people. But I have when I speak to a lot of different singers, there's sort of some general consistencies that you would see probably in techniques. Wouldn't you agree?
Like, yeah, absolutely. There are some things that are just the boxes need to be ticked.
They
right?
have to be.
And then within that frame, what I'm finding working with my students now is within those ticked boxes, there has to be room for adjustment.
Sure.
You know, the support sensation is going to feel differently to you than it does to me. You know, and the resonance is going to feel different. And so I think it's important to look at the body and the instrument that we're working with and expect realistically,
of course,
you know, have realistic expectations and kind of tailor our teaching to that. A lot of my teaching has been kind of the way that I am in person. It's very, I work very energetically and very kind of, I can read people's thoughts. And so that gives me a different insight when I work with people.
You're really intuitive.
I've always been, and I think a lot of us are once we allow ourselves to listen to that inner voice. But I think for teaching, that is so valuable
I
because
think you're
so
right.
often I can look at my students, say, why are you doing that? And I can answer it for them. And
Yeah.
it's usually because there's a reason. There's a voice in their head that says, I feel self-conscious about this, so I'm going to do this. You know,
Ah, I really
uh,
found that my teacher actually does that really well. So after I was a baritone for all those years doing like young artist programs and stuff, I still had a high voice and I wanted to become a tenor. And so I found another teacher and I walked in and he looked at me and I said, I'm here to see if I'm a tenor. And he said, you're a tenor. Like literally, he didn't even question it. He knew. And then of course, yeah, you're right. Like whenever I would do something, it was always some other thing in the way. It's the head that gets in the way a lot of the times with young singers. We're
yeah.
so self-conscious about all different kinds of things, about our bodies, about the way we think. We always want to be right, and we're not going to be. Part of learning how to sing is being wrong a lot, and being okay with making a bad sound, because you're in a lesson. That's the point. You're trying to fix that, and I think a lot of people want to be perfect in front of their teachers, in front of everybody, just because they're so afraid of making a mistake. But I mean, that's what it's like, rehearsal. That's what it's for. I mean, that's why we
Yeah.
do it. That's otherwise, if we were perfect, we wouldn't have to practice, right?
Amen. There it is. And there's so much to be learned, even just from that.
Yeah.
Within our lessons, I think that it's important to have a set time that is set aside to practice how to practice.
Yes. Yeah.
Practice in front of your teacher.
Sure.
So that they can help you when you're on your own practicing. They can show you how to do it. I think,
right.
oh my God, we can talk for hours.
I know. Well, the funny thing is I literally tell people, like young people, when they're asking me questions, or when I'm working with people for Opera for Peace or other organizations, basically, I say get a somebody to help you with your mental health. Like I believe wholeheartedly that having somebody to talk to so that you can get all that other stuff out of the way kind of makes you available for the art, for the ability to let go. Because if you're holding on to something, it can hold you back. And that happens in life in general. I think a lot of people, they end up with hindrances just because of what they've gone through in their lives, how they've been brought up, whether they grew up in a place of war, I mean, things get in the way. Yeah. How's it going over there?
Well, every day there's something new.
It's terrible.
It's very, very difficult time.
You've been doing some stuff
right now.
You've been trying to help in some ways with that, right?
I've actually started a little, my own little initiative called the Lessons for Lebanon. It's not very original.
Yeah, but it's great.
I'm offering singing lessons to those who apply, and this started because I've been thinking about it for a while, but mainly because I'm aware of how fortunate I was and that we were able to start life anew in Canada.
Uh-huh.
And had we not had that gift, life would be completely different. No, I love Canada. I'm a proud Canadian. But I will tell you that for Lebanese people who are so patriotic, we miss home all the time.
Oh.
And so what I'm finding is with my contacts, mainly on Instagram, a lot of them are young musicians.
Sure.
They have some training, they have some schools there. What they have difficulty with is transitioning out of that and making any kind of living or any career in,
of course,
the classical music business. And so what I wanted to do is help with that transition by giving them lessons and taking them to the next level, and then hopefully connecting them with the right people in the industry so that they can have performance opportunities. So it's really wonderful. It's multifaceted. We'll see where it develops and how
far along are we here?
Well, I've just started in the last couple of weeks, and I have lost count of the amount of applicants. So I'm going to, it's going to take some time to see everybody.
Do you have other singers helping you? Because I'm happy to help.
Thank you. You know what? You may get a call from me in a few days.
I'm sure I will. If you, I imagine that you have an onslaught of singers coming to you now, because first of all, you're you, and they know who you are, and you know, it's such a need. There's such a need for it. I can only imagine. I mean, there's so many places like that in the world, actually, and I think that's what's great about Opera for Peace too, because you know, the idea of bringing all these different artists from all around the world and trying to merge them into other places, like with the exchange program idea. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the mentorship for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about Castleton.
Okay.
What did you learn? Like I'm sure that you spent time there even before I met you there. Like I'd met you before, I think, kind of like in passing, but never like worked with you and spent time with you.
Right. So let's tell our friends. We met. Let's tell everybody. We met at Castleton. We were doing Bohème.
That's right.
It was
2011.
10. Oh, 11.
You were there in 10. That's right.
There in 10. Right. Okay. And it was my first Mimi, was it?
Yeah.
It was your first, no, yes.
Definitely.
It was my first Mimi, my first full Mimi, your first Rodolfo.
Nope, I had done it in Syracuse once.
Oh,
but yes.
Right. But it was Maestro Mazel's first staged live Bohème.
Right, it was in this huge tent that they had put up, and I mean, that thing was huge.
It was huge. It was huge.
So what with Mazel, I think, you guys had a special relationship. And speaking of mentorship, I mean, just like what exactly do you feel like you got? Like, I'm sure you got a million nuggets of information from that man in the time that you spent with him. I remember him, he was getting kind of older then too. So he was very specific when he spoke to you. Because I remember when he spoke to me, he was very, very specific about what he wanted from me. But that was great. I mean, I could only do what I could do. I had just started singing as a tenor, I guess, a year and a half earlier, almost a little less than 2 years earlier. So I was just like, I mean, working with one of the greatest, conductors who ever lived. And I mean, that's a lot.
Well, you were amazing. I mean, oh my God, come on.
No, we were amazing. I just watched our video again from that duet. It's hot.
The one on YouTube?
Yeah, we did good. We did a good job. I mean,
isn't it interesting to look back? It's interesting to look back.
So what did you learn?
Well, I had coached the arias with him before. Sure. We met in New York, and he coached me on the arias. And one of the things that he was very adamant about in that coaching was the speaking nature, the recitative nature, of Si mi chiamano Mimi.
Sure.
And then moving into melody, and it was really interesting how he really wanted that contrast. Before that Bohème, we had done Gianni Schicchi and Suor Angelica, and that was all, just and legato, long line. But, without getting into specifics about every role, because that might be boring, I think the biggest, well, for our purpose here, I think the biggest thing and the most important thing that he gave me that I needed without even knowing I needed was trust and complete belief in me. And I didn't, looking back on that and looking at, little Joyce of back then, who was starting out and wanting to make a career, I really needed somebody to believe in me and to just be in the pit and let me do my thing and be there for me. And he was
always with you. I would watch him conduct you, and he knew where you wanted to go, when you wanted to, what you wanted to do. I mean, that's support too.
That is so supportive, and it's rare.
Yeah,
it's rare.
You were also really supportive too. I remember being on stage scared for my life sometimes, especially that first act, because it's so much pressure. Every other tenor in the world who's ever sung the aria in the first act of Bohème, I think they all know that it's like critical to the rest of the night.
Yeah.
just because that's the, you have to hit that high C, it has to be right. And that was, a really hard thing to do early on in the career. I really,
I'm sure.
I was nervous. I would look into your eyes and you were like, you've got this. And I would be like, yes. I mean, I really did feel supported. So I really appreciate it.
I'm glad. Teamwork. You've always had this incredible ring to your voice, and just, that it's amazing to me to know that you had this, inner dialogue.
Of course, we all do, right? I mean, we all have these little things.
But that's something for our young singers to hear too, that it's normal.
Yeah, we have another dialogue going on all the time, basically. I mean, you have to ignore it sometimes.
Yes.
I was literally just talking to somebody about like letting go enough to make art, because like part of learning how to sing is all this technical stuff that we're always trying to think about, like all these different, the body has to be open, or this and that and all these things. And then we also have to actually like deliver intention, why we're singing what we're singing to the audience, and actually let go enough so that they can believe that we're not thinking about singing. And I think that took the hardest and longest part of it, just because, and not with that, I felt like we were pretty comfortable on stage actually, but there were times when things were just a lot harder, in different times and different periods of my career so far too. I think you understand the pressure goes up the more known you become, right? So then there's more people looking at you, and there's more people judging you more seriously, because they're like, oh, you should be this far along now, or we want this from you, And I think young singers especially feel that already. They already have that in them, and they're already nervous. And so to add that other compound level of fear in the back of people's minds when they're on stage, it's just, it's not always helpful.
Right. What do you think is the thing that, the most difficult thing that young artists are facing today?
Well, I mean,
okay, let's say let's just
pre-COVID. Let's take COVID.
Pre-COVID. Okay, because this is a weird time and we can't. Let's just.
We just did that, by the way. I just want to say they're going to make a meme of us both doing that at the same time. We literally. No. Okay. Pre-COVID, even pre-COVID, I think a lot. Listen, there's always been the same problems, right? There's always been access to auditions. Always, the cost of the business is enormous just for a young singer. I talk to people a lot about the finances of the industry and how we are put on hold when it comes to making money. I mean, I didn't have a decent paycheck until I was in my 30s. And when you grow up with less, and then you have to fight for everything, you're working hard for it, and you're paying for school. And I mean, just getting out of school alone and having no debt, that's impossible. Like, and there's no guarantee of a career, right? So schools are graduating 24 to 30 kids a year who, I was told 0.5% of actually have a career. Now it depends on what you would call a career, because there's all kinds of careers in opera.
Right.
But what the dream is to be the next, Pavarotti, of course. Everybody wants to be like the next greatest singer in the world. And I think it's hard. I mean, that's one of the hugest things. I think also with the industry as a whole, financially speaking, it seems that it's been on a hold. I think even when these young singers coming up, even if they make it, the hardest thing is going to be how do they sustain a livelihood, just a home. I mean, I'm 40 now. I'm over 40 now. Like, I'm 41.
You are?
Yeah.
I missed that. I had no idea. Okay.
Oh, we're both very young, yes. And and I think, I don't know, it's going to present a lot of challenges for the future in the industry, because if the fees in houses, even if you do make it, are the same as they were in the 70s now, or 80s now, then how are people going to sustain a household even financially in the future, 20 years from now or 10 years from now? So that's one of the biggest issues in the industry, is that there's less money in it than there was 50 years ago. The lives of soloists are less rich than they used to be on an average, I think. I hear stories of, famous singers, they would finish a contract and buy a house after one contract. you know, and that shows
You mean you don't do that all the time?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have like 70 houses, didn't you know? Um, no, of course not. I mean, that's just not how it is today. So I think that obviously financially, that's one of the biggest things. But when it comes to like, you know, it just depends on your access. You need connections. There's all kinds of things that fall into place to make a career happen. I mean, you can say the same thing, I'm sure. Like there was one moment where somebody helped you and it pushed you into the face of somebody else who could help you, or you know, you got to be in front of different people with different opportunities that we got, luckily. I mean, it's a lot of luck. So God, there's so many things standing in the way. I think that's part of the reason why we give back, just because we know how hard it is. We've been through it, and also we know how much harder it will be for these singers coming up.
Right.
We got to do a lot of things because of Castleton, though. I mean, look at that. Listen, from just that one summer I was there. I mean, you were there before that, and you already had a relationship with Moselle. But Castleton, we did a tiny desk concert, which is weird for opera singers, really, but especially singing Bohème in a tiny carpeted, dry little room, which mostly has rock pop singers like doing their tiny desk concerts. It was kind of an honor. I loved it, but it was a challenge. If you remember, we sang couple arias and a duet. And we went to Munich and got to do Bohème in concert there at the Philharmonic, which was super cool. I mean, I didn't have that opportunity before that. I can't say. I mean, that's awesome. Just that alone gets you in front of other people. And then you have the opportunity to get yourself rehired, to go and show your stuff to people. And you have to have this mentality like you can do it no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that's really strong in me. I think when I'm on stage, even in the hardest times, when you're feeling ill before you go on stage, but you still have to do it, the show must go on, you know. I've done it. I've had places where I wanted to cancel even, and they were like, we can't find anybody, you know, we'll make an announcement. Will you, you know, and you just do it. You do what you got to do to make the show happen, because you don't want to make the public upset, because they're coming, especially in Europe, where they're still applauding for you 10 minutes after the show's over. You know, I mean, when you're in Munich, they're just like in unison for like 10 minutes. It's not me, the whole production. We don't have so much of that in America anymore. People are leaving before the bows, you know, at some houses. But I mean, it's a challenge, I think, in different parts of the world with popularity too of opera. I find in Europe, there's still a huge love for opera, which is great for us. I gotta say. Hopefully we'll be back singing here in America soon. I mean,
I know it's
devastating this whole time, right? So back to Corona.
Okay.
We're gonna bring it back in. I mean, obviously now you've set up these lessons, I'm saying. And that's a wonderful thing that you've been doing during coronavirus. What else have you been doing? Have you been working on anything else?
You know, I'm gonna share two things with you.
Please.
I've been working on some, you know, personal musical projects, which I will discuss at a later time. Still moving along, but I've had the time to work on some things that I hadn't had a chance to work on until now, musically. So that's been really, really exciting to, you know, flex those creative juices.
Yes.
Flex those juices. You can't say that. Flex those creative muscles.
Classic.
I don't even know what I just said.
Classic Joyce.
Anyway.
This is why every tenor in the world is jealous when you work with another tenor. I remember when I first worked with you, there was so much jealousy from a certain tenor friend of yours. Just because he wasn't there with you. That's all. Just because they weren't working with you. So yeah, this is the Joyce that we love. All these
tenors, tenors. You know, can't live with you, can't live without you.
That's right.
Okay. So the other thing is, it's been, and I have to say, I say this with all the love in my heart for all of us in the industry who have had all of our work just, you know, destroyed. There's been a silver lining, I think, for me and for many of us. And that we have been home, and we've actually had time in our homes.
Last year I was on the road 8 months.
Exactly.
This year I'm home for 7.
Exactly. I mean, there was 1 year, I think, where I was home 13 days.
Right.
13 days out of,
Yeah, 3 here, 2 there, 1 to change luggage, like.
Exactly. So, you know, I've been working on our front lawn and
Nice.
painting the back deck, and, you know, just doing these bizarre human things.
Things that, you know, we don't have a lot of time to do on the normal.
Yeah.
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 I love
And
projects
so
like that.
I do too. And I've really enjoyed that.
It gives you that's a
I
balance.
miss making music. I miss, for a while, I was pretty, I was okay with having a break, but
Sure.
then, you know,
Then it got to be long.
we want to go back. We want to go back to work, right? And we need it,
Honestly.
and the public needs us to go back to work.
Yeah.
People need
Yeah.
the arts. It's not negotiable. You know,
Yeah.
you've seen those memes going around social media where, you know, most of your time in quarantine has been spent enjoying art. You're watching
Yeah.
Netflix, you're listening to
Yeah.
music, and
Yeah.
right.
We need it.
Yeah.
People need it. I think that, you know, that's another thing in America that makes it harder for young people coming up, is that there's not such an emphasis as there used to be. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I used to get a ton of art every week in schools and education. And in this country, we've kind of taken the money out of the arts, and I feel like that's what makes us well-rounded people. Even if we don't become artists, it's not about like the next singer or the next violinist.
Exactly.
It's about this well-rounded individual that you create as an adult. And that's what I think is so sad sometimes when I go to schools and I visit and they haven't had any music for a week. Like there is no music. I just don't understand what's going on when it comes to the politicians and this thought process. But that gets more complicated as we talk about it too. So,
so let me ask you this.
Yeah, please.
What a question that we get asked often, I'm sure, both as mentors and Opera for Peace ambassadors, and what advice would you give to a young singer today who is in between, you know, schooling and a career?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's hard because it depends on the certain person and what they're going through specifically. I tend to find it hard to generalize, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are hard to do between school and career. For me, I remember before Yap Tracker existed, I had like made my own Yap Tracker. You have to be really diligent. You have to think outside of what people are already giving you. So there's all these resources now that I actually didn't even have when I was trying to find auditions. I found every opera house in a 400-mile radius that I could drive to, even if it was for like a leading role in a small, tiny house. And I still have the spreadsheet somewhere. Someday I'll share it as a joke. But I knew
not as a joke.
I knew where they were, like when they were typically auditioning, like what point period of the year, and I had it in order. So I knew when the application had to go out. I had really, somebody taught me that. And it was actually another student when I was in college. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was not prepared and I was totally disorganized. Like, you know, just this guy who used to play a lot of sports and sing musicals for fun in high school, who's in college now singing opera, like out of the blue. I never wanted to sing opera. It was not my, you know, like you don't grow up in America thinking I'm going to be an opera singer someday. It's just not the average thing, you know. I wanted to be an astronaut, you know. So obviously that did not happen, by the way. I'm going to be the next person in space, Joyce, just so you know.
Wait.
The singer in space.
I'll wave you off.
You can't hear, yeah. No, but anyway, diligence is really important. I didn't even know how to organize a binder with music in it the way that other singers were doing it already. And I just learning and watching other people do that got me on a roll. And then I started like thinking about all the different things that would get me just a little bit ahead of every other person in the business, at least if I could. I mean, even as a baritone and who's not a baritone back then, you know, you try to make sure you're looking the best you can when you go into an audition, all these different little things, you know, but really it comes down to just preparedness. I had all those houses on that sheet for a reason, because I knew what they were going to do. I knew what I was going to sing for them. I knew when the application was due. And Yap Tracker basically took care of that. Like literally a year and a half later, Yap Tracker came out. So I'd made this entire section that I was using for like all of a year.
Well,
I
you're
think
ahead of the game.
just you have to work hard, and you have to work hard a lot. It takes everything you have to make a career. Someone just told me about an old adage. I'll just add this. If you try to sit between two chairs, you're going to fall in the middle. And you really have to sit on one chair, like especially when it comes to such a niche art form that's already so challenging to do. I mean, trying to sing on stage and project over a 100-piece orchestra in a house that sits 3,900 people is not a small task. And, you know, it takes a lot of work, and you have to be willing to put in that work. I was lucky to have a work ethic, at least. I had always had to since I was
oh my goodness, you sure did. I think
we all do. That's the only way we get it.
Well, the other thing I would add to that is, you know, work hard, work a lot, but work smart.
Yes, yes, yes.
You have to be efficient. It's
hard
great
for young singers. It's hard for young singers to know, and I think that's another reason why mentorship is so important.
Yeah,
to know what smart work is.
Right, exactly, and I'm always impressed by the students who aren't afraid of asking dumb questions, because they really don't exist. You know, how many things have you learned from just doing it, from just having a career? You would never know before then. So, yeah.
How much don't you think you're learning when you're teaching? You're like reinforcing your own technique and
I mean, it is astonishing. I work with a student and then I tell myself, okay, just do that later. Remember this later.
Yeah.
For yourself.
Right, exactly.
Teaching has improved my technique for myself.
Every single singer I know says the same thing.
It's just crazy.
You know, even my teacher, he literally could sing like right now because he sings every day. And when you think about that, you're like, okay, this guy demonstrates and teaches all day long. He can sing every single note that he asks me to sing. And because of that, I think about a technique that way. You have to work on it every day. And that's what's so great about teaching. Have you found any areas that you struggle with, like when it comes to your teaching style, or like what have you learned about teaching in the last, you know, period where you've had time to practice it? Because it takes a second to just jump into teaching. Sometimes you have to dive in and then tool around with your style.
The obstacles right now are the fact that it's online, as you know, right? And so I can't really see or touch or feel or you know, or say, put your hand on my belly and see.
It's a hands-on sport, you know.
It is. So that's one of the challenges. And the other thing is that I find that with a new student, it takes 3-4 lessons for us to get to speak the same language.
Sure. And also there's a trust level too at first, right?
Yeah.
They're afraid to let go in front of you and tell you what they're feeling. And
it takes time. It's really a partnership. And the best lessons are the ones where there's a real exchange of thoughts and ideas. I'm feeling this when I do this, so that's why I don't want to do it. Well, okay. For you now, to your ear, it's going to sound really ugly, but to me, it sounds good. You know, that kind of back and forth takes some time.
It really does.
Yeah.
We have to close this out soon, but I wanted us to talk a little. I know it goes by. We could talk for hours. We really need to talk more often, Joyce.
We do.
That's part of the problem. Like, let's close out with just like our general, you know, hopes for the industry, especially in America, with what's going on, and just tell me your hopes and thoughts, and I guess we can call it a day for today.
Well, you know, my hopes is that we get back on stage and get back to bringing people something which they very much need.
Sure.
And I know that there are theaters around the world who are getting back to it. It's modified, certainly.
Of course.
But they're ambitious and they're courageous, and I think that it's very inspiring to see that. And you know, if there's a theater in North America that is willing to do that and to put themselves out there and to try something new, I am behind that 100%, and I will drive my way to go and help make that happen.
I agree 100%. You literally took the words out of my mouth, just because there's innovation happening in these countries and in these cities in Europe, and there are reasons why we could do some of that, you know. And I know it's harder with America because we don't have borders that are so closed. You know, if in Europe, if the countries want to close their borders to protect themselves from this virus more, they can do that. But we close the border of New York to Jersey or Connecticut, and people can't get to work, or you know. And I know that that presents its own challenge. But I do feel like the generic attitude towards Corona, especially when it comes to the art forms that, I mean, if we can put people on planes traveling together with masks on, how come they can't spread out inside an opera house and sit together and watch an opera with masks on? It's a huger space, there's ventilation. It makes me think a lot about these things. And my hope is that our house leaders and our union and Opera America or somebody can help lobby for more freedoms within it, but a safe freedom. Obviously, it has to be in a safe environment. It has to be in a state that's been, obviously, all those things. But my hope is that we can get on stage sooner rather than later. You know, we're talking today, and the Met just announced officially that they're not having the rest of their season. It's a terrible time in America. It's devastating. Anybody who is watching today and who donates to these houses, thank you so much. We really appreciate everything that you're doing. And Joycey, I love you.
I love you too. Let's continue this conversation and see if we can help move things along in our industry for our audience and for our artists.
Yeah, and luckily
I have such respect for you and for everything that you're doing, and it's just a pleasure to see your face, your handsome face, to talk to you and catch up. We could talk forever. We didn't even, it wasn't even the tip of the, what do you call it? The thing, the iceberg. Listen, English is my third language. Sometimes you have to bear with me.
I have no problem. You speak English perfectly, you know. All right.
All right, my dear. Lots of love. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah.